Enigma depravatio est. Enigma crudelitas est.
Here, because what if there really is a Nephilim giant from Atlantis that is in Egypt, and it's 30 feet under the base of the mound, and possibly the Freemasons and the Masonian could be trying to cover it up. I think there is some truth to conspiracies, as we know with the UFO phenomenon being released in the public all over the media now for the first time in 50 years. So below us, below the base of the mound, could be a chamber, and some of these stones could be remnants of the chambers that they did found and the higher base of the mound. So this is the top of Moundsville, and there's the haunted prison that's abandoned, kind of famous as well. So this is a strategic point near the river, which was the highway of its day. And at one time there was a building here, a pub, and that was taken down. But also the mountain was actually higher than this previously. But it was flattened to put a building on top. Welcome back, my fellow seekers. I had a chance to visit Moundsville, West Virginia during my vacation in the Shenandoah Mountains. The mountain is situated at the farthest extent of the Mississippian cultures. The site once had a settlement going back some 300 BC. The Creek Mound of the Adena tribes was once 70 feet tall with a spiral pathway that led to a temple-like hut, similar to the Miamisburg Mound in Dayton, Ohio, which I also visited and made a video on. If there was a lost tribe of giants, this would be the last time period they existed, although they were very few in number and were dying out, or hybridizing back into normal humans to an average of 7 feet, from their original supernatural mutated height of potentially 10 feet tall, back over 8,000 BC. These lost tribes of giants may be the last of the megafauna humans born from normal humans in Atlantis at the end of the Ice Age. And according to the website Legends of America, a few of these giants may have been found. One of the first reports of giants occurred in 1774 when Jack Parson was walking along a recently flooded Cheat River, when he noticed some bones were protruding from the ground. He pulled a femur from the soil, and when he compared it to his own, it was 7 inches longer. He then removed the rest of the bones and laid them out, estimating that it would have stood 8 feet tall. Other settlers also found gigantic skeletons in the area, which was soon dubbed Giant Town. In 1838, when amateurs excavated the Grave Creek Mound in present-day Moundsville, West Virginia, they were said to have found giant human skeletons inside that were as long as 8 feet. In the 1850s, when a root cellar was being dug in East Fairmount, West Virginia, here workers uncovered 2 very large human skeletons, said to have been more than 7 feet tall. Several people saw the skeletons, but that night the bones were stolen, assumed to be sold off in a lucrative market of Indian relics, which existed at the time. In 1857, the Western Literary Messenger reported that the skeleton of a giant had been found, stating, "A day or two since, some workmen engaged in subsoiling the soil of Sheriff Wickman at his vineyard in East Wheeling. They came across a human skeleton. Although much decayed, there was little difficulty in identifying it by placing the bones, which could not have belonged to other than a human body, in the original position. The impression made by the skeleton itself was measured by the sheriff and the brother in the craft locale, both of whom were prepared to swear that it was 10 feet 9 inches in length. Its jaws and teeth were almost as large as those of a horse, and this could be photo evidence of that giant skeleton put together. But what's interesting is there aren't 6 fingers and 6 toes, so maybe those claims could be false. Either that, or this specific giant mutated back to kind of normal human attributes. In 1875, when workers were constructing a bridge near Paw Paw Creek's mouth of Riverville, they uncovered 3 giant skeletons with strands of reddish hair clinging to the skull. A local doctor was called to examine the remains, who determined that they were definitely human and estimated that the skeleton was approximately 8 feet tall. Afterward, with exposure to the air, the bones rapidly decayed. In 1882, amateur archaeologist F.M. Fetty and his wife were exploring an unusual rock formation along the White Day Creek in Marion County when they found what appeared to be a shelter. On closer examination, they discovered that a false wall had been erected, and after removing several large stones, they found very large ancient mummy sitting in a chair. The giant was surrounded by stone and flint artifacts. In the summer of 1883, James A. Faulkner unearthed unusually large human skeletons in the same area. Dr. Samuel Cromer of Smithtown was called in and measured the skeleton, which was found to be 7 feet 4 inches long, and deduced that it belonged to a person who was almost 8 feet tall. That same year, the Smithsonian Institute dispatched a team of archaeologists to the Creole Mound in South Charleston, led by Colonel Lewis Morris. The team conducted extensive digs of some 50 mounds in the area and issued a detailed report. In their investigation, the team uncovered numerous giants, one which was 7 feet 6 inches tall and decorated in 6 heavy copper bracelets on each wrist, and on their shoulders were 3 large plates of mica. Another mound, they found a circle of 10 skeletons surrounding a giant skeleton, as well as underground vaults, various copper and mica ornaments, jewelry and religious items and pipes, and spearheads. Although a large skeleton was also found that had a flathead type skull. As more digs progressed in the coming years, archaeologists in Wheeling, West Virginia found another group of giants ranging in heights of 6 feet 7 inches to 7 feet 6 inches, which displayed unusual skull formations with low foreheads and prominent backs of the skull, possibly cranial deformation. As similar discoveries were unearthed, the Charleston Daily Mail published an article in October 1922 that stated, "One of the most interesting of the 5 state parks is Mound Park at Moundsville, from which the city derived its name. Probably no other relic of prehistoric origin has attracted as wide of study among archaeologists as the Grave Creek Mound, which has given up skeletons of ancients who constructed it. Archaeologists investigating the mound some years ago dug out a skeleton said to be that of a female because of the formation of the bones. The skeleton was 7 feet and 4 inches tall, and the jawbone would easily fit over the face of a man weighing 160 pounds. In June 1930, the Clarksburg Sunday Exponent reported, "Interesting and valuable evidence of a race of gigantic people who inhabited this section of West Virginia more than 1,000 years ago have been exhumed from 2 newly explored mounds located near Morgansville, which is on the northwestern turnpike about 12 miles west of Salem. The particular tribe or race which inhabited this section of the state is believed to have been composed of individuals ranging from 7 feet to 9 feet in height, and it is thought that they were the Sionian Indians. The best preserved skeleton found at Morgansville was in a clay encasement, and all other vertebrae and other bones, except the skull, were saved without much crumbling. Careful measurements of the skeletons proved that the Indians were about 7 feet 6 inches tall. This was in response to Professor Ernest Dutton, the head of the Geological Department of Salem College, having excavated 2 mounds in Dodger County in which he uncovered 4 skeletons. The most recent discovery of these giants were made in 1959 when Dr. Donald Dragoo, the curator of the section of man at the Carnegie Museum, excavated the Crisep Mound in Marshall County. There he unearthed a 7 foot 2 inch skeleton. Tales of colonial giants permeate American history, not only in West Virginia but all across the continent. These many finds in America and the rest of the world support the idea that giants once walked on Earth centuries ago and were more than just mythological beings. Now, if you want to learn more about these mounds, check out YouTuber CFApp7865, who I'm sure a lot of you know. That's how I found out about this mound. And Chuck, if you see this video, I would be open for an interview. I think it's good that YouTubers are talking to each other about these topics, but it would be good to talk to others with a different hypothesis on these enigmas to avoid an echo chamber. For example, I don't think it's logical to believe these giants are 20 feet tall, but it's possible something under 10 feet could be covered up because in geopolitics, conspiracies are a reality to some extent. We should avoid outlandish claims and find something more reasonable. As Ahsoka says,
There's always a bit of truth in legends.
For example, I do agree that these giants may have a connection to the lost pre-Celtic tribes who may have migrated to New England, creating some of the stone walls and chambers, and this may have a connection to the Solutrean hypothesis. So these are the ancient ruins, some of the stone walls that have been sort of repurposed, as you can see. They've been piled up over time and moved, but all over some parts of Virginia Valley you see a lot of these rubble stone walls that were supposedly for clearing for farming, but the thing is, if there was a pre-Celtic civilization, they would have done the same thing. Cleared out the stone walls, made it kind of like a enclosure area for the hut settlement, and piled it along here. So this could be the remnants of that. So here's some more of those stone walls I was talking about that have been repurposed, but many have been found all over the Shenandoah Valley and could have a connection with the stone chambers of New England. But most of these lost tribes stayed east of the Appalachian Mountains, for they were most likely few in number and integrated with the Mississippian cultures, who may have contributed to building some of the stone walls and chambers with this Celtic migration, who were probably eager to have sex with these natives. I mean, have you seen Pocahontas and Disney's Atlantis? So they probably hybridized away from their European traits, or simply died off, or went back to Europe in multiple migration waves, but in small numbers without horses, which limited their migration along with the Shenandoah Mountains. Although I don't think the Solutrean hypothesis is going over 20,000 years ago, but actually within the past 6,000 years, at least when it comes to those who might have built the stone chambers and walls. But more than likely, multiple waves of small number of tribes landed on the coast of North America, possibly here at Ocean City where I vacationed. This lost tribes of giants may have been one of the first to migrate out of Europe until they landed on the shores of New England. So I do think these Nephilim migrated out of the Garden of Eden in Egypt and settled in Europe for a few thousand years before finding their way to New England. After a few thousand years later, they assimilated with the native hunter and gatherers and practically became Native American after a few generations of breeding, giving birth to the Mississippian mound builder. But I'm not saying this to justify the Europeans are superior. Again, these Nephilim aren't normal humans, but they were accompanied by normal humans from Europe. Europeans simply had a head start because they are closer to Eden. Geography has a major deterministic factor on the advancement of a civilization. North America was simply too vast for all the native hunter-gatherer tribes to consolidate into an empire. The Mississippians did try though. For example, if a pre-Celtic tribe came to New England, most of them were probably confined east of the Appalachians. And it was at a place like Moundsville that they may have encountered each other. But without horses, that encounter is very limited. The Nephilim may have spread across the US, but they were very thinned out, and eventually the Native Americans may have killed them off, if they were becoming very barbaric and cannibalistic, as the Genesis legend of King Og states.
Og, riding gaily on the unicorn behind the ark, was quite happy. Ha ha, he laughed gleefully. I shall be able to eat and drink just as much as I like now, and shall never be troubled by those tiny little creatures, the mortals. Be not so sure, said Noah. Those tiny mortals shall be thy masters, and shall outlive thee and the whole race of giants and demons. The giant did not relish this prospect. He knew that whatever Noah prophesied would come true, and he was so sad that he ate no food for 2 days, and began to grow smaller and thinner. He became more and more unhappy as day by day the water subsided and the mountains began to appear. At last the ark rested on Mount Ararat, and Og's long ride came to an end. I will soon leave thee, Father Noah, he said. I shall wander round the world to see what is left of it. Thou canst not go until I permit thee, said Noah. Hast thou forgotten our compact so soon? Thou must be my servant. I have work for thee. Giants are not fond of work, and Og, who was the father of all the giants, was particularly lazy. He cared only to eat and sleep, but he knew he was in Noah's power, and he shed bitter tears when he saw the land appear again. "Stop," commanded Noah. "Dost thou wish to drown the world once more with thy big tears?" So Og sat on a mountain and rocked from side to side, weeping silently to himself. He watched the animals leave the ark and had to do all the hard work when Noah's children built houses. Daily he complained that he was shrinking to the size of the mortals, for Noah said there was not too much food. One day Noah said to him, "Come with me, Og. I am going around the world. I am commanded to plant fruit and flowers to make the earth beautiful. I need thy help." For many days they wandered all over the earth, and Og was compelled to carry the heavy bag of seeds.
Enigma depravatio